All right, welcome back. It's yet another episode with Sammy. Today is, what do we decide? It is March 27th, the year 2024. Very important information. So we talked about all sorts of stuff last time, mostly I think your army stuff in the late 60s, weightlifting, some army adventures, some sneaking out, some getting caught, that sort of stuff, if I recall. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds about right, yes.
Okay. And I think we were going to start this session, which is part 5 of our family history with Sammy. We're going to start when you start university in the fall of 1969.
That's right. Just one thing I wanted to mention. Between my discharge from the army and 1969 fall, my father's wife, Nina Isakovna, unfortunately got very ill. She had an accident, she fell, broke her hip bone, and at the X-ray exam afterward they found out we had actually cancer of a bone. And since then she was bedridden for the next year and a half at least. Unfortunately, on heavy-duty painkillers, if nothing else taken place, with some exams every once in a while at hospital, but...
So that was in the late 60s?
It happened actually after I came back from the army.
Okay.
Shortly after.
Okay. So what effect did that have on you? How did that affect your day-to-day? Did you help out in the house? What did you have to...
Well, I didn't help much in the house, but I had to go get her medications and I had to help to take her to the hospital because there's no ambulance called for that occasion. I have to take a taxi. There was no wheelchairs. There's no elevator in our building, so we basically have to physically carry her down to a taxi and from the taxi physically carry her down into the hospital. It was a bit of a hassle, obviously.
Yeah, it sounds like it wasn't ideal. So, what kind of trip was it? Like, how long would it take you to get from the apartment? And you're on Rakova at this point.
Yes, that's correct.
So right central St. Petersburg. And where was the nearest hospital that you went to?
Hospital wasn't that far away, maybe 15 minutes drive by the taxi, 20 minutes drive by the taxi.
Was it easy to get a taxi? What was the process? Did you call? Did you go out on the street and hail one?
Go on the street and try to flag one.
Was there a lot of taxis back then?
Well, quite a few, but you either flag it on the go, which was doable, or you go to specific areas that taxi stops where.
Okay.
Okay, and that's how you get it. And that was it. So most of the time I flagged it because we lived close to the Nevsky Prospect and there was a lot of taxis always around. So getting it wasn't an issue. Getting Nina Isakovna into the taxi was obviously a problem, and getting her out as well.
Yeah, so she probably wasn't too mobile.
She was absolutely non-mobile.
Not mobile at all. So you had to do a lot of carrying and...
Absolutely. And like I said, she was bedridden for all the time.
So she wasn't even strong enough to, like, she just got weaker and weaker.
She was not getting out of bed.
Oh, man.
Because at the beginning we had the cast on her break, but when the cast came off...
On what?
Cast on a broken bone, which we had. Which how it's all started and was diagnosed. That's how cancer was discovered.
Were you pretty close with her?
Yes. Yes, she was a very good woman. She was good, taking good care of me when she could. And my father was happy with her.
Yeah. So how long were they together for total?
We got together somewhere in 1962. And I came back from the army in 69 and in 68, in the fall of 68. That's when she had that accident shortly after. And she lasted for about maybe 12 to 16 months after that. So she passed away probably around 1970, 71.
Before I was born, it sounds like?
Yeah, before you, or definitely before
your wedding?
Before, yeah, absolutely. So it wasn't even 71. It must be 1970, 69 or 7, late 69 or early 1970. I don't remember the exact date.
So how did that affect, how did her death affect Yuri?
Very strongly, I presume, because first of all, he had to take care of her from very little things to big things. She couldn't move herself. So we have to turn her around every so often. Our next door neighbor in a communal apartment helped every once in a while. We have to. He had to feed her. I didn't participate much in that. We talk sometimes, but she was most of the time she was under heavy sedation, not heavy narcotics, painkillers.
Where'd you get the painkillers, or is that the medication
It was a medication which was prescribed.
Do you remember what it was?
It was called Pentapon, something like that. I don't know.
You actually remember?
I do, because I had to go to a drugstore to pick it up for her every month. And it wasn't just like any drugs prescription. It had to be sealed by government
official stamps,
and I had to present my passport.
Oh, wow. So I'm assuming this is all cash. It was all rubles.
Absolutely cash.
There's no such thing as credit cards.
Credit cards were science fiction. Nobody knew what it about. There was no checks.
Yeah, I was about to ask about. So everything was cash.
Everything was cash. Okay. That's how the black market economy prospered.
Right. It helps when it's all cash.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was on this heavy medication, so it was kind of in the days most of the time, because that painkiller probably was something similar to more than heavy-duty drugs, narcotics.
So she had cancer, like bone cancer?
Yeah, it was.
And that's what weakened her bone and
that's why she broke in the first place, because it was weakened.
Right.
And it never healed really.
And you figured out the diagnosis after she broke the bone?
Yeah, after she broke the bone, she went for the regular X-ray, and that's where it was discovered.
I'm assuming there wasn't a lot of good patient care for cancer patients back then. At least not that you knew of.
It was not good care for any kind of patient.
Sure.
Never mind cancer patients.
Okay.
I've been in the hospitals as a visitor a few times when my mom was there, and when my aunt Zhenya was in the hospital once in a while. And it's like from a Dickens novel. All the time.
Right. Not a lot of bedside manner or actual care?
Well, not really. Mostly individual pallets were not known of, unless you're in the
individual
rooms where the patient could live or stay by it himself.
So it's all like large rooms with multiple people.
Yeah, about 15, 20 beds in one big room, and everybody has their own issue, and some people crying, some people screaming, some people doing something else like all the sick people do.
Sure.
Not a pleasant environment to begin with.
No. Okay. Well, shall we get, is there any more on that you wanted to talk about? Because I was asking you about how that affected Yuri.
Like I said, he was really busy with taking care of her, plus he was still working at the time. So she was left by herself quite often with just our next room neighbors in our communal apartment checking up at her every once in a while. And that's how it lasted for 12 to 16 months, I think.
That sounds like a way to quickly deteriorate.
It was. Yeah, it was definitely not beneficial for anybody, for her in the first place.
What kind of hours did Yuri keep in his job back then? Do you know, like, was he working days, evenings?
No, he was working days, shifts all the time. I don't think he worked evenings. At factory, he didn't have an evening shift. So he was working 9 to 5, basically. Going to work, coming back, and having to take care of her and me to a certain degree because we all
and
lived together.
himself?
And himself, obviously, of course.
Was money an issue, or did his job pay enough to get by?
I think we managed to get by. I don't remember running into any financial problems, but again, I may not be privy to what was happening in his pocketbook or in his wallet.
You were removed from that decision making, and
Yes, I was. Mind you, I was working already myself, so I brought money home as well. Left some for myself, but obviously, a big chunk of my salary was going back into a common kitty.
sure, okay.
Yeah, because I found the job basically very quickly after I came back from my army, maybe within a couple of weeks or so.
Tell me more.
Well, I found a job in the same company which I worked on the practice when I was at the technical school before the army. It's a company who was dealing with fabrication and erection of structural steel. We have the structural fabrication shop, and we have drafting office, which was serving that shop, and I ended up working in the drafting office.
Right. I think you told me a little bit about that in the last episode.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you come back from the army, you get a job. Your father's wife is sick and deteriorating. This is 1969, and you start university in the fall.
Well, it was end of 1968 or beginning of 69 when she fell sick, and I started university in the fall of 69.
Okay. Do you want to fast forward to the fall of 69, or is there more stuff before that we want to
No,
talk about?
not really much. The only thing is sport related, but first year when I was just working, I still managed to continue my weightlifting training in the same club that I was part of before the army. But it did not last because once I started university in fall of 99, that was it
80,
for me. 69. That was it for me for have no free time.
That was the end of your weightlifting career?
Yes.
So did you do any more weight-related stuff at all until we came to Canada?
Not at all.
Okay, so when we came to Canada in the early 80s, we started at the Jewish Center, and that's like the first time you hit a weight room again?
That was the first time I hit the weight room again, but there was no connection to Olympic weightlifting, just basically weight training, a bit of weight training.
Yeah.
Just to stay in shape, more or less. That was the idea.
So you took a 10-plus year break from any kind of weights, essentially, roughly.
Just about from late 69 all the way to probably early 80s.
Okay. All right. I digress. All right. So, university.
So getting back to university, that was part of a overall system, but I got a job as a draftsman in a drafting office. In order to get the seniority designation, I had to have a university diploma. So that was part of it. Secondly, I wanted to continue my education anyway. That was always my intention. So I signed up for university, and I still have full-time job. So kind of university I've attended, or kind of studies I did was in the evenings.
So tell me about the university. You're living downtown St. Petersburg.
Yes.
You're working where? Where's this job?
The office was originally on Vasilievsky Ostrov. That's on the far side of Neva River. I could get there by public transportation plus walking.
That's how you got to work every day?
That's how I got to work every day. In the summer, actually, every once in a while I walk. It took me about 45 minutes walking from home to that place, so it wasn't that far away as far as the city size goes. And when we moved, our drafting office moved to a different location, just because we had so that's a different story. When I changed job, it was a different location, even closer. I could get the subway close enough to it.
Okay. So tell me about the university. Where was it? What was it called?
The university called in Russian it's Ленинградский инженерно-строительный институт, which means Institute of Civil Engineers, which basically equivalent to universities as we know them here in the West.
Where was it located?
It was located not far from Moskovsky Prospect, close to subway station.
So how did you, what was the application process like? Was it pretty easy for you to get in? Was it easy for other people to get into universities? Because it was, everything was state funded, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Or was there more you had to pay?
It's a little bit more to it because university was divided. With daytime university studies for full-time students who didn't obviously have any other work or job to do, it's for younger people. And that was government funded, and they actually were getting some stipend, some allowance for the whole time they studied there. The drawback was that after we graduated university, they had to, they basically were sent where the government authority wanted them to be. Sometimes it could be all the way across the country.
So
for at least 3 years.
For free education, they told you where to work.
Yeah, at least for the first 3 to 5 years, depending on university, depending on your profession.
Sure.
After that, it was easier to move, but not that easy because there was some other issues involved.
So this was not your situation?
Not my situation. The second
Well, wait. So tell me about your situation.
Okay, the second choice, which was my situation, was for people in the same position as me, people who a little bit older, age-wise, for students, had full-time job.
So you're what, 23 at the time-ish?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And I had full-time job, so with another option was to study in the evenings, which also was funded. I didn't have to pay for it, but I also didn't get any allowances or stipend. So the courses themselves were free. And that's what I took because it was the only option available to me. The third option was a correspondence course, which was also available for people who live in a different location and still wanted to get diploma from that specific university.
So how many semesters were you in university for? Is that how it worked? Did it work by semesters?
It wasn't by semester, it worked by years. I was there for something like 4.5 years.
Okay.
So it's basically the same as a full daytime study. It's the same subjects, maybe a little bit more compressed because of a time constraint.
So you're sitting in lecture halls, you're doing the same thing just in the evenings?
Correct.
No weekends?
No weekends.
So you worked all day and went to school all evening?
Yes, my daily schedule was I get to work by 8:30 or 9, I can't remember now. Work was off at 4:30 or 5. The evening courses started at 6. So I had a quick bite to eat somewhere in the way and all right to school.
Every day, Monday to Friday?
Monday to Friday, correct.
Bite to eat. Tell me more. Like,
well,
what were the options? Street food, restaurants, cafes?
Well, there was no such thing as street food. There were some small pirashkovy, as you know. With some cafeteria at universities as well. The selection of food was not great, but we didn't really pay. It was what it was.
That's all you knew. Was there coffee?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Don't believe so. Coffee was...
Sounds very repressive to me based on that alone.
Well, it was common. It was something you knew about. Sometimes...
Did you know about coffee?
Yes, we did. We had some instant coffee in the stores, which appeared maybe a little bit later than my enrollment at university, but about the same time. Okay.
So, all right. So tell me about university life. did you kind of keep to yourself? Did you make some friends? Did you know people in university before you started?
Most of people, all of people we started with, I never met before because we coming from all different places, sometimes from out of town, sometimes from... We also strangers in the beginning, but we developed some good relations. Some of us did some homework together, did some projects together.
Was it all specific to your field of study, or were there options that you took that had nothing to do with your field of study?
It wasn't an option. All the subjects were predetermined. Some of them were absolutely relevant, like history of Communist Party, which you have to study and go to exams. So actually every subject we studied, we had exams every semester, every half year on all the subjects.
So you didn't get to choose anything. You
No.
just chose the program,
No,
and they
the
told you what you're studying.
Correct.
So what were some of the other subjects other than... So the history of the communist system sounds wonderful.
Of course it does.
What else do we... what else are we talking about?
Well, the rest was basically technical subjects. And it was easy for me to a certain degree because most of the subjects, technical subjects, were the same as I studied at college before the army, just to a greater depth, but the same idea, same subjects, most of them. Some of the subjects were new, but not that many. So it was relatively easy for me. I don't know how it was for other people because quite a few of them just had a high school diploma when whatever else we did with our life.
And you had some quite a bit of practical experience already at this point.
Correct. Yeah.
What about, was there any, in the subject matter that they taught you specifically in the history of the Communist Party, was there a propaganda element? Did they talk about the West? Did they paint an evil picture of the great enemy?
No, but by association, we always paint a great picture of our present and
past.
And apparently it was the only great and greatest things ever happened to humanity.
Sure.
So by missing any mention to the Western ideology, it kind of
it made it seem irrelevant. What about outside of school? Was there active propaganda happening in news, in print, things like that, or was it mostly propaganda through omission, as you just described?
No, it was obviously one-sided propaganda about describing achievement of...
So it was all about the greatness of the Soviet Union and its satellites, as opposed to the weakness of
absolutely
the other.
Absolutely, and it was propaganda not just on the success of a state and the system, but also people associated with it.
Sure. Well, this started in 69, so we're talking 69, 70, 71, 72-ish. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world back then. For example, there's a lot of proxy wars being fought between the two superpowers in the Cold War. So Vietnam was in the middle of its stint back then. Was there, what kind of stuff was in the news about Vietnam, for example?
If I remember correctly, one thing was about evil imperialists trying to repress the free people of Vietnam, blah, 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 and how we try to help them without direct participation in the war. And
so it was talked about how
oh yeah.
Okay.
It was talked, maybe not extensively, but it definitely was talked. I remember it was a big news when Kennedy was assassinated. It was before the army.
Yeah, that was 63.
Yeah, it was before my army, but it was exactly...
Yeah, how was that portrayed?
It was portrayed as a fact that it was done and it could only happen in society which has no rules and no respect for humans. And
okay,
basically it's the same thing.
Sure.
It hasn't changed in 70 years.
Okay, so speaking of Kennedy, so let's go back to 62. How is the Cuban Missile Crisis portrayed in the Soviet Union? Do you remember? Because that's going back a few years. But
It's going back to a few years. In the '62, I was just at that college. I was 16 at the time.
sure. Do you have memories of like how is it reported? Because I have an understanding of how it was reported in the West.
Honestly, I don't recall how it was reported, but from my experience, must have been reported as another victory of social system, another victory in the Cold War. Of course, it was an achievement of best country in the world. It couldn't be anything else.
Okay. What about, more generally speaking, was there a lot of talk about nuclear weapons or nuclear testing and arsenal superiority, that sort of stuff? Was that in the news? Was that talked about? Did people talk about it in the streets, or is that kept from most people?
No, it was really not discussed very much. The only thing we always knew that we have a capability to defend ourselves.
Right.
Comes hell or high water.
What about the space race? What about all the space achievements in the late 50s and in the 60s?
Well, the space is always, again, portrayed as a kind of an argument for the superiority of a system we live in because we managed to do it first.
Right. But I mean, like, was it constantly being talked about, all the various achievements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The achievements by West in the space race actually were not mentioned
Right.
on the same page, or not definitely not to the same degree or to the same extent.
Okay. All right, let's get back to 69, 70. So Vietnam's not really mentioned that much. Once in a while, there's talk about the Western powers being beaten back by the Soviets and communism and their partners in China and the proxies in North Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like you weren't that involved in the political side of things, or at least it wasn't that interesting to you. You were more just trying to learn the technical side of your future career path.
Honestly, I didn't have really all that much time for it, but I was always distrustful to the official propaganda, which was in all the newspapers, which is actually we've been forced to sign up for or subscribe to at work.
So where did that distrust come from? Is that something that was inherent to you? And were the people around you also equally as distrustful? Was everyone distrustful, or was it something that wasn't really talked about in public unless you're with close friends or family?
It was not something which was widely discussed, but the people I had kept company with, most of them were very not trustful to what we hear and see, because the examples in the everyday life did not always match what you read in the papers.
Right. So the quality of life didn't seem to match, or the abundance of goods or the medical care, for example,
yes,
didn't seem to match with what was being
daily
portrayed.
Experience.
But how did you know that there were better alternatives? Or how did you know that what you were experiencing wasn't the greatest country in the world?
Well, never thought about it that way, just because we never had an option.
Right, that's what I mean. You didn't get to see much or anything of the outside world. So how did you know there was something else out there in order to be cynical of the messages that you were getting, or just the messages and what you were seeing around you didn't add up?
You know, there was a lot of anecdotes and jokes going around, which were not obviously publicized widely, but went from mouth to mouth. And a lot of them were quite satirical about our experience in our life compared to the life in the West.
So where does that come from? Like, where did that come from? Because someone, the origins of these jokes and anecdotes must have a basis that's rooted in what's happening outside of the Soviet Union. So someone must have access to it.
Well, some information was coming through different channels. Some of them, there were some broadcasts from outside of the country, like BBC had broadcast in Russian. Voice of America radio station was.
But it wasn't acceptable to listen to that. You had to do it kind of on the down low, correct?
Yeah, you have.
Or could you easily get it on a radio?
No, it was you had to get a radio actually modified to be able to get to that wavelength on the shortwave radio.
So the radios that were publicly available did not get those frequencies.
Yes,
on purpose.
I would think so.
Sure.
I would think so. And some of them were easily modifiable, not easily, but modifiable to get to that frequency range. So people did listen. When there's a lot of people who travel abroad by job-related things, like sailors, I know Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra was out of the country for most of a year.
Sorry, did you say the Calgary Philharmonic?
Oh, sorry.
Leningrad.
I'm in the wrong city. Leningrad Philharmonic, which was considered one of the best in the world at the time.
So some people got to step out of the border, see what's happening, and then come back.
Yeah, come back, and the stories, obviously, by grapevine were going around. Okay. Now, the biggest part of it started in 1972, when some of the people managed to officially leave the country to live in the West. And obviously communication from people like that grew like a wildfire.
So what happened in 72 that would allow people to leave?
Well, in 72, before 72 there was also a small trickle of people to leave, but because most of the Jews who leave were educated people, the requirements was that they had to pay back to the state the cost of education they got.
Before they left?
Before we left. And the amount of it was basically unreachable to most of people.
An astronomical, ridiculous number.
Yes. Well, I'll give you another sample later on that. And in 72, for some reason, I don't know why, that requirement was removed. So in 72, end of 71 and 72, there's a heavy or widespread immigration from Soviet Union to Israel, mostly Jewish people. Some of them obviously ended up, if not big part of it, ended up in the States instead of Israel.
So was it just Jews that they started allowing to leave the country?
Yes, on the subject of reunification of families.
That sounds like there were some ulterior motives involved.
There was ulterior motives involved when we left.
Right. No, but I mean, there's no way the Soviet government did that out of the goodness of their own heart. What was the incentive?
That I do not know. I can't tell you. We may have to look into it and see what was the reason behind it. May have to Google it. I never really looked.
Was it so they can collect the money to pay, like the payback money for the education, or do you think countries like Israel were paying places in the Soviet Union to allow Jews to come out?
I doubt it very much, because that decision was not made on a local government level. The decision was made on a central government level. So I'm not sure if it was... There must have been some political concession or some agreements to some degree.
Yeah, I'm just wondering there was definitely political reasons and definitely monetary reasons of some sort.
Well, it has to be incentive.
I'm just curious what allowed that. Like, I'm sure someone, it would be an interesting thing to research. We'll get back to that at some point in the future. But it's only Jews that they were allowing out.
Yes.
Or were there other subgroups?
I don't know about our subgroups. I know that at least 90+% were Jewish people.
I guess
maybe some other people had the same option to...
There's probably not a lot of other subgroups
who have relatives elsewhere.
Well, no, just in general in Russia.
Probably. Most likely, yes.
Okay. All right. We wound up all over the place.
Digress. Just to give you one more example on the monetary value of such things.
Sure.
When we left in 79, we have to give up our passports, never mind education. And for the honor or for the privilege to give up our passport, Soviet passport, we had to pay 500 rubles each, which was at that time my 3 months salary.
So your salary per month was 500 rubles.
No,
So
160.
Sorry.
It was 3 months salary.
Oh, three per person.
Yes.
500 rubles was 3 months of your salary. And
Yes.
we had to do that times 3.
Times 2. I don't think you had passport at the time.
I didn't have a passport.
Lucky you.
Lucky me. Okay. Yeah, that's...
And that's, if it's 500, it was just for privilege to give them your passport, when education was kind of in tens of thousands of rubles.
tens of thousands of rubles when you made 160 a month.
Well, even if you have 300 a month,
Sure.
it's still...
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a racket. And
It was basically a very effective way to stop people from from leaving.
But why would they allow people to leave and then try to stop them?
No, up to 72, that was a big hoop people have to jump through.
So after 72,
they
relaxed that restriction.
We stopped taking money for education or requesting money for education.
I see. So,
But the passport refusal still was on.
So the money for education, they realized for some unknown reason was a roadblock to people leaving. And for some incentive, they had some sort of incentive to allow Jews to leave. We're not sure what that is just yet. We'll figure that out. So they loosened the restriction to allow more to leave.
Yes.
Which benefited someone in the Soviet government somehow. We're just not sure how.
Must have.
Yeah.
Must have.
Okay. All right. So they started allowing people to leave in the early 70s, and then reports started coming back to family members of those who left.
Not just
a little more info about what happened in the outside world.
Not just family members, but friends, and like I said, it spread out like a wildfire. Because of information people share with their friends, and their friends went to share with their friends. So how people managed to set up their life outside of Soviet Union. And I personally have seen some of his letters, because a friend of mine who now lives in California, they left 2 years before we did. Her mother was still back in the country. In
76, 77 they left?
I believe they left in 77, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And her mother was still in Leningrad, and she was getting letters from her daughter, my friend.
And you got to read some of the letters?
I got to read some letters. And
This is your ex-girlfriend that wound up in San Diego?
Correct.
Okay. And we went to visit them in the early 80s, if I recall.
Yeah, when we've been in San Jose at the time.
San Jose.
No,
right.
now we're in San Diego. She's in San Diego now.
Okay. So back then it was NATO versus the Warsaw Pact.
Yes.
Was there, sorry to keep getting political on this. I'm just very curious about like what the conversation around the bars was back then. Was there talk about other members of the Warsaw Pact? I'm assuming you got messages like, or you got messaging from the central government about how places like Romania loved being part of the Soviet Union, and it was the greatest.
Of course we did. And even more so, when we went to Hungary, the Soviet troops actually went to Hungary to kill the resistance which Hungarians had. And when we went to 68, I believe went to Prague, to Czechoslovakia for the same thing. It was obviously portrayed as we helping our friendly government to continue to live in the best possible system in the world.
So all these countries that were forced into the Warsaw Pact wanted nothing to do with the Soviet Union, but everything, for the most part, I'm sure there was a few, but everything was depicted as we're doing them a great favor, and everyone in those countries wanted nothing more than to be part of the Soviet Union.
Well, absolutely, because in most of these countries, the governments were actually Soviet regime puppets.
Right. And
Communist Party of all of which all of these countries, satellite countries, they all been in power in these countries.
And they all had to, certain generations all had to learn Russian, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Some of them had it as an option in school. Some of them actually had to learn it.
Yeah. I spoke to my friend Vlad. He was telling me how his parents were forced to learn Russian in Romania. I would assume a lot of, and I know a lot of people in the Czech Republic of a certain age were also forced. It was not an option.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. The same actually happened in Poland.
Yeah,
same happened in most of these countries, most satellite countries.
Okay, all right. We've jumped all over the place. Let's get back to university.
Okay.
What did you and your friends do outside of classes?
We didn't have much time.
What kind of social life did you have, if any?
We didn't have much time to outside of classes really, except on weekends. Sometimes I managed to skip that evening classes because on the lecture, my friend and I, and a couple other friends, we used to keep a record of what was told to us. We never had any handouts back then, but we just keep writing down what the professor told us.
A lot of note-taking.
Note-taking, and some of us managed to do note-taking with carbon copy paper.
So you made copies of the notes for your friends?
Yes. So sometimes we start, it wasn't in the beginning, it was in the later years of university. We started taking some of it and spread them around. I know I had one specific guy who was basically thinking along the same line as I did. So we cooperated in that way. He was taking it one day, I was taking it the other day, and we just shared that.
That's smart, very smart.
Because what we really need that material for is for the final exam on that subject. We didn't need it in between.
So what was your social life like back then? And where I'm going with this question is, when did you meet Dinna?
We met in the fall of 1970. That was a blind date.
Okay, tell me more. Now we're getting somewhere. Who set you up?
I still don't know the exact chain of events. There was a lady who lived in Leningrad, who was some distant relatives of Dinna's family. Relatives, so even I don't even know what the relation is. But your mom stayed with her when she came to St. Petersburg for doing preparation for exams to university. So apparently her mom and that lady knew each other.
So Dinna's mom, Rosa, knew this woman.
Yes, somehow.
Were they friends or were they relatives?
If we were relatives, it was very distant relation. I don't know the details of that. I don't know if we've been friends.
Sure.
But that lady, on the other hand, she was good friend with aunt of my cousin who lives in Albany.
Okay.
Igor. So his aunt and that lady used to work in the retail business, so we knew each other from back then, from that kind of thing.
So how did you get introduced to this lady?
So
do you remember her name?
Yeah, Rebecca Danilovna. I didn't get introduced to her. I met her after I met your mom.
Okay, so wait a sec. So how did the blind date get set up? Who set that up?
Well, between those two aunts, between Rebecca Danilovna and the aunt of my cousin in Albany, apparently we set it up somehow. They let me know.
Do you remember the name of Igor's aunt?
Yeah, Marina.
Marina.
Yeah.
Last name?
I don't know her last name, to be honest with you.
That's okay. All right, so Marina and Rebecca?
Rebecca Danilovna.
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Okay. So they decided that you need to meet Dinna.
Yes.
The two of them. So how did they make that happen?
Well,
did you get a letter?
There was no letter. It must have been a phone call.
Someone called you?
Honestly, I don't remember right now. My guess is it was a phone call saying that if you want to meet a girl, when that's time and place.
So Dinna was at the same university as you, or she was in university in Leningrad at the time?
She was in the University of Teachers.
She was at a teacher college.
Yeah, well, call it university or institute, but yeah. No, it's totally different place.
Different place, but
Different.
close by?
Not far away. Most of these universities actually were located within close to the center of the city.
Do you remember the name of her university?
Yeah. Педагогический институт имени Герцена.
Sorry, what was the last part? Institute what? Pedagogical Institute of...
Not of. It's most of institutes were given the name, honorific name.
Oh.
That was имени Герцена, who was a writer and political...
Gertzen?
Yeah.
So it was the Pedagogical Institute named after Gertzen.
Yes,
Who had
named in his honor.
In his honor. So, and he was some sort of educator? Or just
He was
writer?
an educator, writer, political entity of anti...
I was about to say, he sounds like he might be a good Soviet.
I don't know if he was good Soviet because he did not live at Soviet's time. He lived way before.
Oh, okay.
But he was somewhat critical of the Tsar's
I see. Okay,
regime at
that
the
makes
time.
sense. Yeah.
Of course, that's why he got the honor to have university named after him.
Got it. Okay. So she was at one university, you were at another. You get a phone call. Do you want to meet this girl? You're like, let's do it.
Yes.
Okay. So do you remember roughly when and where you met?
I remember exactly where it was. When, I think it was in the fall. I don't exactly, I think it might be at the end of September, maybe October.
Fall of 70.
1970, yes. We met at the Pushkin Square.
Pushkin Square, is that where the statue of Pushkin is?
It's not the one you're thinking about. There's the one you're thinking about is the one close to where we lived.
Yeah.
There's another street not that far from where, a Pushkin Street, and had a little park in the middle of it. Tiny little one with a Pushkin statue there.
Another Pushkin statue.
Oh, yeah.
There's plenty. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you met in Pushkin Square by the statue in the fall.
Yes.
Okay. And how did you know who you were looking for? And how did she know?
I honestly don't remember well.
Because you hadn't seen each other or spoken before.
No.
That. Okay.
No, it was a blind date.
Tell me more about this meeting.
We met, we talked a little when...
Wait, slow down. You can't rush past that. So paint me a picture here.
Well, I don't know how
It was a beautiful fall day in downtown St. Petersburg.
Oh, okay, you want poetical.
No, it doesn't have to be poetic, even though it would be nice since we're at Pushkin Square, which would be appropriate. But yeah, like... Was it a cold fall day?
It was cool. It wasn't cold. It wasn't winter yet.
Sure.
Your mom was wearing...
now we're talking.
Mom was wearing...
furs?
Not furs, but not winter coat, but fall coat, let's say. Let's put it that way. I believe she had a fur hat at the time.
That makes sense.
Other than that was it.
That tracks. Okay.
Yes.
And you guys immediately kind of spotted one another, or was there some confusion about...
I don't think it was
that
a confusion.
her or is that him?
Well, I don't think it was a confusion. There wasn't that many people. It's not a square, it's a big square. It was a little...
It's a little park.
Little tiny park with probably 5 or 6 benches altogether in the middle of a street. So it wasn't something expensive or extensive.
Okay. So... how did you greet one another? Was it a hug? Was it a handshake? Was it from
I don't think
distance?
it was a hug. I think we just I asked her if her name. I knew the name.
You knew her name?
Yes. I asked her if it's...
Are you Dinna?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe it's how it happened. It's been so long ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Okay, so you guys chatted.
Yeah, we chatted, went for a walk along with the street when...
Well, wait, hold on. So... did you, like, right away, were you interested, or you're like, who's this strange person I don't know? Do you remember?
I think I was interested. I like what I saw. who I saw.
Okay.
Other than that, obviously it was just first impression, appearance-wise.
So what was the first impression after you chatted for a bit?
Does it have anything to do with my university?
What do you mean?
We're talking about my studies.
No. I mean,
No,
what was
I
your first?
understand.
Yeah, what was the first impression after you guys were chatting?
My first impression was kind of a quiet person, kind of not jumping up and down, a little bit in control of herself. Not very outspoken, but not totally quiet either. If you know what I mean?
I do. Do you at all remember what you guys talked about that wasn't small talk, or was it way too long ago?
It was way too long ago, but I don't think it was anything of significance.
Okay.
Because I believe...
What time of day was it?
It was in the evening.
Evening?
Yeah.
Weeknight?
Weekday.
Weekday.
I think it was... Actually, I'm not sure if it was weekday or weekend. I can't remember, but I know it was in the evening.
Okay, so you guys met. Did you wander around a bit, or did you
We
sit?
wandered around a bit, and when, if I remember correctly, I had a couple of friends which we wanted to meet before I met your mom. So I called them, and we went over to their place.
You and Dinna went
Yes.
over to your friend's place?
Yes.
These are university friends?
No, with my friend from army time.
Okay. And what did you guys do?
We just sat around and were talking about something. Maybe had a bottle of wine. I can't remember now.
Okay.
I remember, I'm not even sure if it happened the same day or at our
Sure.
next
Sure.
date.
So you took her on a date to meet two of your friends?
Well, yes.
Okay.
There was not much else to do.
Sure. Okay.
And again, I don't remember how did we stay in touch, because she lived in the dormitory at university at the time. Phones were not available.
Sure.
We had a phone at the time, so I'm not quite sure how did we stay in touch. But we did. We managed.
Okay. I like that. I like that part of the story. I think we should leave it there and pick up more on your courtship next time, because we're almost at an hour already. So let's pick up next time on the continuation of your relationship. Seems like a reasonable place to end.
Yeah, because as far as my university time goes, it's really not much else to say. I worked, I studied, I graduated, went through all the exams, I graduated, and that was it. And after I graduated,
Not too many spoilers. Not too many spoilers. Let's pick this up next time.
Okay.
We'll chat. I got way more questions about the first few weeks and months that you knew Dinna. How about we leave it there?
Okay, and your mom might be able to add something to it eventually.
Of course. All right. Till next time.
Shri Singa, Janri Singa, Jaya Janri Singa, Prahladesha Jaya Padma Mukta Padma Bringam, Shri Singa, Janri Singa, Jaya Janri Singa, Prahladesha Jaya Padma Mukta Padma Bringam.